Yes, it is. Welcome into Warriors Live on 95.7 The Game. The day is finally here. Warriors open the postseason tonight in Houston. It is the final game of round one, which as fans, we might hate waiting for it, but that's good news for the Warriors because they need the rest. They did get 4 full days off after their play-in victory over the Grizzlies on Tuesday, and now they're gearing up for the Houston Rockets in round one. Game one tips off in about an hour and a half, and you can find it right here, of course, on 95.7 The Game. Because it is the postseason, we've got a special edition of Warriors Live for you, a full hour, which means we're live from now, 5 o'clock until 6, and it's Evan Giddings. I'm Mark Randy, both of us here in studio to get you ready for Warriors and Rockets game number 1 in Houston. Evan, it's been 83 games for the Warriors to get to this spot, and now they're back in a familiar position, back in the postseason once again.
Well, yeah, it's been 2 years. Yeah. I mean, they weren't in the postseason last year. By the way, happy Easter, everyone, and hope everyone's having a nice Sunday. But, yeah, it's been some time. I know it sounds strange, but if the Warriors, if this season went off the rails in the way that it was going until Jimmy Butler got here, this would have been the 4th season in the last 6 they did not make the playoffs. Oof. So while it is a familiar place to a lot of people, it's kind of been up and down. There's been a little 1 year on, 1 year off for this team, really since the 2020 season started. And it's just got you feeling like I was talking to Cam, our network coordinator, before the show, and he's like, yeah, I woke up today and I realized there's meaningful basketball. Meaningful basketball is now being played. And so I'm really excited because whether it's pregame, postgame, these are the games that count. We're going to be talking about what happens for 48 minutes, not the future, not the past. We can live in the present.
And there's no doubt that the game tonight, Warriors-Rockets, is the best game of the day. Some of the other games around the NBA today, Evan, we had a 51-point OKC win over Memphis.
Oh, you didn't enjoy that?
I mean, the game was over like 5 minutes in, although it was actually kind of competitive in the first quarter, and then the rest of the game was an absolute blowout. Celtics trailed the Magic at half, but then dominated the second half, and they ultimately won that game by 17 points. And right now, going on in Cleveland just before half, it's an 11-point Cavs lead over the Heat. That's not a blowout by any stretch, but we got one of the best series of the first round, I think, likely here. Warriors and Rockets, game 1 coming up in about an hour and a half. This is Warriors Live, presented by Xfinity. Stream sports from the best seat in the house with Xfinity. Bring on the good stuff. These are two teams that have played 5 times this year, believe it or not, Evan, because there was the extra Emirates NBA Cup game in Houston that bumped the normal 4-game season series up to a 5-game season series. The Warriors actually won the season series 3-2 versus the Rockets. But what is fresh in our mind is the last time these two teams played, April 6th, 2 weeks ago today, the Warriors fell 106-96 at home. That was when Steph was held to just 3 points on 1 of 10 shooting. I think the prevailing thought around most of Dub Nation was before that game, this Rockets team was the team the Warriors wanted in the postseason, right? Least postseason experience. You don't want LeBron and Luka. You don't want the Joker and the Nuggets. You definitely don't want Kawhi and James Harden and the Clippers, and you want to avoid OKC because they were historically good. This kind of felt like the team the Warriors wanted, but did what happened 2 weeks ago, Steph only 3 points against Amen Thompson and company, did that change your mind about who you might want if you're a Warrior fan going into the first round of the postseason?
No, I think that, look, obviously they played some good games against good teams outside of that Houston game, but that was the tail end of a really tough stretch for them. They'd played a lot of basketball in a small amount of time, and nothing to take away from the Rockets. They're a really good basketball team who's also peaking at the right time. But that game to me was almost like a game 2 or game 3 of a playoff series, a game where, all right, the Warriors lose, and now you make the necessary adjustments, and I think that's what we're going to see, especially with 4 days off.
Yeah.
And then you get 2 between now and game 2 and game 2 and game 3. I do think this lines up to be, whether or not they win the series or go on and win multiple postseason series, this is the perfect playoff path for them, because from what we've seen as of late, Houston is a team that's gettable. The Warriors are favored in this series. You stay off the OKC side of the bracket. Yep. And so if you are hypothetically to make a finals run, you only have to beat one of the Thunder, the Clippers, and the Nuggets in order to get there. And I think that everyone at the beginning of this playoff format, whether you think the Rockets are dangerous or not, I think all of us have appropriate fear of Houston. Yeah. But this is the way that you'd want it to shake out.
Yeah. You get the 4 days off, and really, we were talking about how if you'd beaten the Clippers on Sunday, the final day of the regular season, right, game 82, you would have gotten the whole week off. Well, you likely would have been playing Saturday instead of Sunday, which means by playing Tuesday and winning Tuesday, you really only lost 1 day of rest because you play today instead of yesterday when the Clippers played, when the Nuggets played, when the Lakers played, who got blown out by Ant Edwards and the T-Wolves in LA, which was one of the more surprising results of the first round so far to this point. So the Warriors, they're feeling pretty good. I imagine they feel as fresh as they have in a long time. And we don't want to look too far ahead in the series, but Evan, they also have the benefit of having 2 days off tomorrow and Tuesday before they play again Wednesday in Game 2. And then they travel home getting ready for Game 3 on Saturday, where they have Thursday and Friday off before the game on Saturday. So not only did you get 4 full days off before the series begins, but you kind of have some time to reset and regroup after games 1 and 2 as well. And I think, obviously, this game is huge. You mentioned the Warriors are favored to win the series. Houston is slightly favored to win this game today. Warriors have lost in their last 3 postseason series. We are going back a couple of years now because you're right, they didn't make the postseason last year. But if you go back to the 2022 finals versus the Celtics, 2023 first round versus the Kings, and 2023 second round versus the Lakers, the Warriors have lost game 1 in 3 consecutive series. And they ended up winning 2 of those series. So I'm not going to say the Warriors are going to lose this game today. All I'm going to say is if they lose this game, it does not mean sky is falling and it's time to freak out. This is a Warrior team that oftentimes uses early games of series as information gathering, and then it leads to the adjustments that they make and allows them to win series, or at least be better positioned to win a series down the stretch.
No, but I do think it's important because you take away the finals, that was some time ago. Their last postseason, Game 1 was important. They obviously didn't have Game 1 at home against Sacramento, but that was a series that went 7 games that I think prevented them from winning Game 1 of the Lakers series because you only had 2 days of rest. No, sorry, you only had 1 day of rest because they played on a Sunday, won Game 7, played that Tuesday at home against the Lakers, and lost Game 1, which sort of set the tone for that series. I do think that it's important if the Warriors are to, again, maintain their health, basically keep fatigue on the back burner, you do want to win this series in less than 7 games. And I think they're set up to do that because of the way the schedule plays out for them. Here's 2 examples of why a 4-day rest is massive. Number 1, you mentioned the game earlier today where OKC got blown out or blew out Memphis by 50 points. That would have been the Warriors. They would have lost that game probably by somewhere around the same margin if they played on Friday.
And Steve Kerr joked about just resting his players for all of Game 1.
I mean, Memphis essentially did.
Yeah.
They only played it for 20 minutes in this game.
But like from the jump, like maybe just play Steph the first 5 minutes, and if you're down 15, all right, it's over.
Yeah, exactly. You just wave the white flag. Yeah. No, Game 1 was going to OKC no matter what. Yeah. And I think that should be the case. They're the 1 seed. You should have some sort of Game 1 advantage and earned it. But the other part of it, too, is the last time that Curry had 4 days off, he set himself up by going for 52 points against Memphis, 37 against the Lakers, and 36 at home against Denver. So when Steph has a long time or enough time to get his body to 100%, he generally plays well. And it really doesn't matter what team he's going up against. Houston is a very, very good defense, and we'll get into all the rest of the parts about their team. But when Curry has had rest throughout this season, he's generally bounced back with big games.
And that was off the tailbone injury, right?
Yeah. The pelvic contusion.
So even that maybe is a little different than these 4 days off, because those 4 days off, he's nursing something and he's not 100% right now. He's actually on the injury report because his right thumb is going to be taped up still. He's available. Everybody is available for the Warriors. I'll give you your full injury report coming up a little bit later on here on Warriors Live. But these 4 days off might be a little different than those 4 days off with that injury to his tailbone area, because he wasn't. This time he's not really nursing anything major that was keeping him out of basketball games. So
he was at the opening screening of Sinners on Thursday in Oakland. He's been enjoying himself. He's probably played some golf.
Oh, a lot of golf, I would imagine.
Yeah, so but he also is at a place where he likes to play. Loves playing at the Toyota Center.
Yeah. He's had a lot of great postseason moments at the Toyota Center as well. I think the Steph Curry conversation is maybe a very obvious jumping off point, because I mentioned the previous game these two teams played 2 weeks ago, April 6th at Chase Center, when the Rockets won 106-96. Amen Thompson, Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, A few others. Tari Eason held Steph to just 3 points on 1 of 10 shooting and 1 of 8 from downtown. Some of it was Steph missing some open shots, there's no doubt. But even if we gave Steph those makes on the open ones, he still probably would have finished with single-digit points, right? Wouldn't have been up above 10. The only shot that he made was one of the more difficult ones, which was just inside a half court to beat the first half buzzer. He got that one to go. Nothing else went in. One of the big questions, Evan, is just how much can Ime Udoka and the Rockets defense limit Steph? Because even with Jimmy Butler being Jimmy Butler, and even if you get a lot from Pajemski or Moody or Draymond, if you don't find a way to get Steph Curry up around at least 25 points per game in this series, it feels like it's going to be difficult for the Warriors to win this one. So what's your confidence level the Warriors are going to be able to free up Steph, unlike what happened 2 weeks ago when the Warriors were at Chase versus the same team?
Yeah, as strange as it might sound, the numbers that I'm actually more concerned about Steph with are inside the three-point line. Like in that game, he only had 3 points, but he only took 2 twos.
Yeah.
And he might have been a little bit tired. Again, I think it was the fourth game in 6 or 7 nights that they'd played.
And they'd won all those really tough games right ahead of that.
But if you're getting run off the three-point line, logic tells you there should be something available inside. And there was really just nothing for Steph in that game. He's only played against them 3 of the 5 times this year, but the other time the game that they won, which was right before the All-Star break, he was 2 for 4 inside the three-point line. And then the game in Houston where he kind of inexplicably shot the ball very early in the shot clock, which may have cost them that game during the play-in, I think, semis. He was 5 of 8 inside the three-point line. So when he's been able to get into the paint and do damage from inside the three-point line, the Warriors have had a lot of success. When he's been kept outside of the paint, when he's not able to drive, not able to finish and get easy baskets, even if it's against Houston, they've really struggled as a whole. Yeah. So to me, where I'm more, interested to find out how much damage Curry can do, it's actually inside the three-point line. Interesting.
Well, it is odd, and the three-point game by Steph 2 weeks ago against this team is very heavily impacting the numbers here, but Steph is actually, this year versus the Rockets, Steph is the Warriors' 3rd leading scorer in games versus the Rockets. And I don't know how many out there would be able to get the top 2.
I have an idea.
Well, give them to me.
Against the Rockets?
Yeah.
Kuminga.
Kuminga's number 1. 21.3 points per game. He played in 4 of the Warriors' 5 versus the Rockets.
Pods?
Pods is not. Pods is, you got to go, where the hell is Pods? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th. 6th is Pajemski.
Then second would be... Well, is it Jimmy Butler because he's only played 2 games?
It is not Jimmy Butler, but you're on the right track with Jimmy Butler. He's also only played 2 games against the Rockets as a Warrior this year.
As a Warrior this year? Dennis Schroeder?
Andrew Wiggins.
Oh, okay.
So pointless to this conversation.
I gotcha.
But Steph Curry is the Warriors' 3rd leading scorer versus the Rockets this year. But as you mentioned, he's only played 3 games versus the Rockets. And that 3-point performance 2 weeks ago is going to really heavily sway the numbers. We don't have to have a Kuminga conversation. I think we talk about him post-game if he plays. But Jonathan Kuminga has been really good versus the Rockets so far this year. And even if the Warriors don't necessarily counter with Kuminga, I think bringing up Kuminga's name can get us into a conversation about this series, though, Evan, because the Rockets do have a lot of athletes like an Amen Thompson, like a Jalen Green, like a Jabari Smith, who they use at times at the 3, alongside a couple of other bigs, which is almost as big as a lineup can be in the NBA. Tari Eason is another athletic wing. They have a ton of athletes, and they are very young to the point where they don't have much postseason experience at all. How big are you in the postseason experience side of this series? Because it feels like NBA fans in general are kind of using that as just a blanket negative for both OKC and Houston. And while I overall understand it, I do think we're selling these teams a little bit short because they have just been so good for the vast majority of this season.
I mean, I think it matters, but the better team's going to win. And how much you weigh experience in that is kind of up to you. To me, I don't look at the Rockets as a team that can't win this series because they've never been in this position before. You see it all the time, more so in the first round, I think, than other rounds where a team that's just uber talented and has a good matchup against an older squad, they can take it to them. And especially in game 1, there's going to be some nerves, but they're at home. Like, I don't think experience is going to play a factor in this game. I think it factors into, all right, you lose a game. Let's say the Warriors steal game 1 tonight. They don't have a ton of experience in how to adjust. Like, Ime Udoka is a really good head coach, but the Rockets themselves have never been in a position where, all right, we got to play differently. Like, they're good enough to play their game, and they're probably going to have a good shot to win. They've won 52 games this year. But to me, it's more like from game to game, how are each of these players changing what they do to try and react to the Warriors? I think the Warriors have an advantage in that category, and that's where the experience comes into play for me.
Yeah, how are they gonna react when they get punched in the mouth? Like, when things get tough for that team, how are they going to bounce back? We know how the Warriors are going to bounce back. The Warriors aren't going to go down with a whimper. They could lose the first 2 games of this series, and you know that they're going to come out and probably win game 3 and get right back in the series. If Houston loses game 1, as you mentioned, how do they come out in game number 2? It's going to be really interesting to see. I also think, we do need to give Houston their credit. You mentioned 52 wins. They've also been on a crazy tear of late. I know they just had a full week off, so we'll see if they can pick up where they left off. They finished the year 52-30. They were, though, 37-25. Over their next 17 games, they went 15-2 to secure the number 2 seed in the West. And then they lost their final 3 games of the regular season when they had already picked up, they already had clinched number 2 in the West. So 15-2 over the course of 17 games, really their last 17 meaningful games, 15-2 over that stretch. It's really, really impressive. But then you get to the point where you are going to be relying on, if you are the Rockets, a number of players who don't have any postseason experience. Their only meaningful playoff experience is from Fred VanVleet, who's played in 52 postseason games, and Dylan Brooks, who's played in 22 postseason games. Those are 2 starters. They both play upwards of 30 minutes a night. Now, they've got a couple of other pieces that you're going to see off the bench. Steven Adams, who's played a bunch of playoff games. Of course, we remember him with OKC. Jeff Green is a veteran. I know that Steiny was throwing around all last week as postseason experience for the Rockets. Aaron Holiday is another, but you're not really going to see a bunch of those others that check in that have been through the grinds of postseasons before. So my big thing about Houston, Evan, isn't necessarily the lack of postseason experience, but it's just when you are in those playoff environments and say you're in the final 5 minutes of regulation, the game is close, all the fans are on their feet, you've got the defense chant going, you've got nervous energy inside of whatever arena that you're in. Who do the Rockets throw the ball to? Who do they call a play up for? Who just goes and gets them a bucket with the fate of the world on the line? Like, the Warriors have 2 of those dudes. I think where this series turns is in those clutch times. Warriors have the 2 best players on the floor. And you feel most confident in that side of the floor as opposed to Houston on offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. But to me, that's not a lack of experience. They're just not a good half-court offense.
They just don't have that dude.
Yeah, like the Rockets, it's not like, because Jalen Green hasn't been there before, he can't do it. It's like, I really don't know. He could be that player. I'm not sure. What I do know is I think they're 19th in half-court offensive efficiency. They're a team that doesn't shoot it particularly well from 3. And while they've been good in clutch time, it's kind of been a by-committee approach. So I don't know what they're going to do under 4 minutes in a clutch game. You're right. I know what the Warriors are going to do. But the part that you mentioned actually about like the top scores in the series, it does lend me towards, and we've seen him play much better, especially in games 82 and then the play-in. Come clutch time, it is Jimmy Butler's game, I think, in this particular series. Not that Steph can't make big shots and have clutch moments like he has in the past against previous Rockets teams, but because of the way that the Rockets defend, particularly in the half court, and the Warriors have been much better since Jimmy Butler's gotten here, but wings are really the players that have given the Rockets fits throughout the season, both with the Warriors as well as all across the league. Guards have been easier for them to take the ball out of their hands, and even though he was not named a DPOY finalist, Amen Thompson is a great neutralizer for someone like Steph Curry. So to me, it's got to be in Jimmy Butler's hands, and then if a chaos play ensues, that's where you're going to find Curry knocking down those dagger shots that, of course, he's capable of doing. But I think in crunch time, you're talking about where the ball needs to go. To me, it's Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. And if you can't get it to Jimmy Butler, you've got a pretty good option in Steph. I think the Jimmy Butler conversation is obviously a really, really key part of this series. I've been throwing out that game 2 weeks ago, Warriors versus Rockets at Chase. Warriors lost by 10. Steph only had 3 points. Jimmy only had 13 himself and only got 7 shots up. And that was kind of like peak, that and the San Antonio loss were kind of like peak discourse. Like, when is playoff Jimmy going to show up? We need aggressive Jimmy.
The playoffs.
He's got
the playoffs.
He's got to get more shots up and score more points, especially when Steph either is struggling from the field or simply cannot get shots up like he was really struggling to do versus the Rockets. You look at the last 2 games, which were not technically playoff games, one a play-in game and one a really, really important regular season game. Jimmy, an identical 12 for 20 from the field in both those games, and in those 2 games combined, got to the free throw line 27 times. So he's up to the aggressiveness, no doubt. And one of the differences I would imagine in the Warriors 2 weeks ago versus this Houston team and the Warriors today and this series is going to be Jimmy's aggressiveness and just his understanding that he's going to have to score more in order to support this Warrior team. We didn't really see that much 2 weeks ago versus Houston. That's going to be an added layer. You add on top of that, Steph scoring more than 3 points. And I think this series is going to look and feel a lot different than the last time these 2 teams met.
Yeah, I still don't think it's going to be an easy series. The Rockets are tenacious. They're a team that really tests how in shape you are, like how physical you can be, particularly on the offensive glass. Like, just because they don't shoot it well from the floor or the three-point line doesn't mean that they are going to absolutely just batter you on the boards. And that's where we've seen in the last couple of games the Warriors be particularly vulnerable. They were out-rebounded against the Clippers. That hurt them. Even though they won the game against Memphis, it was tight. They were out-rebounded in that basketball game. The Houston Rockets don't have necessarily like a 7'3" player like Edey or I don't think Şengün is as physically imposing as even a Zubats, but they gang rebound and they really try and clean up those second chance opportunities. So the Warriors, who have been leaning, and understandably so, into more smaller lineups, they're going to have to hit bodies. They're going to have to box out and be prepared to take the brunt of the damage as a result of that. So the Rockets are going to test how physical this Warriors team is. And if they're up to the task, I think they can win the series.
Well, we're definitely going to see their 2 big lineup, Steven Adams and Şengün on the floor together. We're going to see that at some point. They've also, at times, tried a 3 big lineup, Steven Adams, Şengün, and Jabari Smith Jr. That's 6.
So Jock Landale?
He's out today, actually, unfortunately. Yeah, we'll get to the full injury report coming up on the other side when we take a break here in a couple of minutes. But they go 6'11" Steven Adams, 6'11" Alperen Şengün, and 6'10" Jabari Smith Jr. Like, that's as big as a front line can get in the NBA just about. The Warriors are going to counter with a front line, essentially, of Moses Moody, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green for majority of basketball games. So on one end, you're probably going to get beat on the glass, and it's going to be difficult for you to get stops down low. But on the other end, you should have mismatches. A lot. And that's what Jimmy Butler did against Zach Edey against the Grizzlies on Tuesday all game long. So there's going to be moments where the Warriors can switch, and you might not even have to get a switch. You might just have someone like Jabari Smith matched up on Jimmy Butler at times. If that's the case, or if you have an ability to switch Şengün onto Jimmy Butler or onto Steph, then you suddenly have a mismatch that you can attack. And one thing that I have enjoyed with the way the Warriors offense has adjusted to Jimmy Butler is we do see a little bit more of the Warriors just simply matchup hunting, and it's kind of isolated to just Jimmy Butler. But when Jimmy has a matchup that you know he can attack, to hell with the motion offense and to hell with all that crazy stuff. Just get the ball to Jimmy, let him size up his guy, whether he's got a big guy on him, drive past him, short guy on him, back him down in the paint, and just get 2 easy points that way. The Warriors haven't really had a player like that maybe since Kevin Durant. And they've been adjusting their offense to feature Jimmy Butler in that role, and it's why they've been able to get a lot more easy buckets in the half court as a result.
Yeah, it's also why I wouldn't be super fearful of the Rockets going big, because when you put 2 targets out there on the floor, like Steven Adams is not the player he used to be, and Şengün is not a great defender. Yeah. He's a very talented offensive player. But when you have 2 targets on the floor like that, and not just for Butler, I also think someone like Curry could take advantage of that as well. When he draws out bigs and forces them to make the choice of whether or not they want to give up a 25 to 28-foot 3 or allow him again to get inside the free throw line and make plays with 2 feet in the paint, I think that also helps the Warriors. So even though we're going to see sometimes the Warriors just look like JV players essentially with the amount of size that they don't have against Houston, I wouldn't be fearful of that as them getting played off the floor by those two bigs.
Yeah, I do think Şengün is the key to this series, though, on both ends of the floor, because Şengün on offense, if you get someone like Pajemski switched on to him, which happened at times a couple of weeks ago, that's a bucket nearly every single time. And the Warriors, with their lack of size and Draymond Green being their only defender they feel really confident in, like matching up with a 6'10 or bigger guy down low, if you get Draymond switched off of him, it's going to be a bucket almost every single time. So that's on one end for Şengün. And then the other end, it's can you get him in the action? And can you have him trying to check Steph Curry along the perimeter? Because if you get that, one, you can maybe get him into foul trouble. Same goes if you can get him on Jimmy Butler. And two, you can have Steph get some space on a big. So I think Şengün might be the key to this series on both ends of the floor. And I would imagine the Warriors have spent a ton of time game planning for Şengün, both offensively and defensively. And we'll see what it looks like here in game number 1. Okay. Time for a break here on Warriors Live. That's Evan Giddings. I'm Mark Randy with you. Warriors Live is presented by Xfinity, at home or on the go. You'll get the fastest internet to all of your devices. When we come back, we'll get your full injury report. We've got our predictions. We'll offer something specific for this game. Plus, we will also let you know if we think the Warriors will win or lose this game. And we'll offer series predictions as well. Might as well as this series gets underway tonight in Houston. It's Warriors Live. That's Evan Giddings. I'm Mark Randy with you for another half an hour, and then we'll hand it off to Tim Roy and company live from Houston as tip-off is just over an hour away. Game 1, Warriors and Rockets. More Warriors Live next on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to Warriors Live on 95.7 The Game.
We're an hour from tip. Probably more like an hour 10, and how the NBA does things. But a little more than an hour from tip-off. Game 1, Warriors-Rockets, first-round Western Conference playoff series. The last of the 8 series to tip off. I mentioned this off the top, Evan. It's probably a good thing for the Warriors. You get as much rest as you possibly can. But I always hate being a fan of a team that plays like to close out the beginning of a round. I always think of this in the NFL playoffs. If you're a fan of like the Niners, or I know you're a Chargers fan, whichever team you're a fan of, and you're in the playoffs and you play like the night game on Sunday, you have to sit nervous through all of the other games. Not quite as nerve-wracking for the NBA, considering it's not a one-game do or die. But I always hate having to watch all the other games, knowing that I'm just nervous for my team to get going.
See, it's funny because the Chargers are not a draw, so they always get the very first game of the weekend.
Never have to worry about that.
And they've lost the last 2 games, and so then I have to sit and watch the rest of the games without my team in the postseason.
That's a good point.
If I was to choose one or the other, I would take the last game, knowing at the very least my team has held on by just virtue of late tip-off until the end of the weekend. The thing about it is, because I also saw someone in our YouTube chat powered by First NorCal Credit Union that was listening inside the Toyota Center.
Oh,
they're going to tip off at like 8:40 local time.
Crazy.
That is one of the latest tips that I have ever heard on a Sunday, on an Easter Sunday, no less. On a 420 Sunday, no less.
Oh.
So there's a lot of people that are waiting a long time to get this game underway.
Yeah, appreciate those tuning in live from Toyota Center in Houston, getting ready for the game. Hit us up on YouTube. Let us know is Steph warming up right now? What, you got any insight for us? Maybe it'll affect our Take It to the Bank prediction coming up in just a little bit. Before we get to that, though, let's get to our injury report. And as always, today's injury report brought to you by Boxer & Gerson, Northern California's premier workers' compensation law firm, helping injured workers get their lives back for over 40 years. For more information, visit boxerlaw.com. There are a couple of names on the Warriors side of the injury report. Both Steph and GP2 are listed, but they're both available with very similar ailments, if you will. Steph, right thumb, it's in a splint, or it'll be taped up. Gary Payton II, it's his left thumb that will be taped up. But those two are both available. Nobody else on the injury report. So long story short, everybody is available for the Warriors. Meanwhile, the Rockets, a couple of role players are out. Jock Landale, right knee contusion, is out, and Jayshawn Tate, right ankle impingement, is out. Those are 2 guys that play the majority of the Rockets' games if available, but considering how rotations shrink in the postseason, they might not have seen the floor anyway. So those 2 don't really impact this game much either. That is the injury report. Good news for both teams. They are essentially healthy, and that's more important for the Warriors, of course, considering how top-heavy they are with Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. But that is the injury report. Nothing to be concerned of, at least as of now. And welcome back to Warriors Live. We're presented by Xfinity. At home or on the go, you'll get the fastest internet to all of your devices. I wanted to play this, Evan. This was from Steve Kerr earlier, last week, with Willard and Dibbs, his weekly conversation on our afternoon show, Willard and Dibbs. Here's Steve essentially summing up this postseason series, Warriors versus Rockets.
I just think the brain power, the experience, the corporate knowledge, whatever you want to call it, of Steph, Dre, Loon, Jimmy obviously has been deep in the playoffs, 2 finals trips, carrying his team, his Miami teams there. I feel like we have everything we need to go and win this first round series. We have the talent, we have the experience, but we know how good Houston is. They just came to our place last week and beat us, and so we've got a lot of respect for them, and we know we're going to have to play well to win.
Talking about the brain power, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with experience. Like, you've been there.
Brain power.
They know what to do. But this is also a Warrior team when they are playing their best and when they're relying on Steph and Jimmy and Dre. Those are pretty smart basketball players and that have been through those battles in the postseason. I also think Steve needs to give himself a little bit of credit because so much of the Warriors' postseason brain power is in the adjustments and the moves that he makes in the postseason. Almost always when the Warriors have been in trouble in their history in the Steve Kerr era in a postseason series, say it was, that Western semifinal against Memphis, the first year they made that big run, 2015, when they got down 2-1, and they made an adjustment, and they put Bogut on Tony Allen, essentially stopped guarding Tony Allen. That flipped the series. And there's a number of other examples you can point to. Starting Andre Iguodala once you got to the finals. And having him, guard LeBron from the jump. And I know LeBron still averaged like a 30-point triple-double, but whatever. Like, the Warriors have often made these adjustments. And I think one of the biggest advantages the Warriors have in this series is, as Steve said, the brain power of both Steph and Jimmy and Draymond and even Steve and the coaching staff itself. I think when we compare like Kerr to Udoka, I think we got a clear one of the best postseason tacticians in one corner, and you have a guy in Udoka who's not a bad coach by any means, but is more of a motivator and gets teams playing his style of basketball as opposed to, after a couple of games, here's a major adjustment in how we're going to win this series. I think the Warriors have a big advantage in terms of the way they use their brain in this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's all well and good until you get down 10 points or 20 points and the other team's running up and down on you and they're faster, younger, longer, more athletic. Like, it's all good until you get punched in the mouth. And so that's why I think the game one is important. I also think we're selling Udoka a little short here. I mean, he's a Coach of the Year finalist for a reason. This team in many ways is ahead of schedule because of Ime Udoka. And also the brain power and examples you brought up, well, all true, factual, and a big reason the Warriors have won 4 championships. Those are all mid-game or in-between game adjustments.
Yeah.
Kerr has sometimes struggled in-game. And that's where I do have a little bit of pause. It's like, just because you can make, like, between game 1 and game 2, if the Warriors lose tonight, I feel very confident they'll come out and win game 2 because of that brain power. But how does that manifest itself in game when we're seeing the Houston Rockets potentially clamp Steph Curry, or they're trying to wrestle him off the ball and they're not getting foul calls? Like, what kind of adjustments can they make? I also think that Udoka is smart enough. This is where I would say he's not just a motivator. The biggest question that I have in this series, there's really 2 of them, because you've talked about the amount of games and playoff experience the Warriors have. 2 of their starters don't. Brandon Pajemski has never played in a playoff game, and Moses Moody, while he has had postseason experience, has never started a playoff game. And quite frankly, the only real post-game experience he's had has come in games that are relatively decided or series that are going the Warriors' way. So I think Udoka is smart enough to set up this at least first game matchup to where those are the 2 guys that are going to beat us. And it's going to be up to Pajemski and Moody to hit shots. And to be fair, they have not come up big in the last couple of big games that the Warriors have needed them. They've won those games because of the greatness of Curry, Butler, and to some extent Draymond Green. But I think the Rockets have a roster capable of forcing the ball out of Steph, out of Jimmy's hands, and making those 2 role players, who are starters, make shots.
I think that Steph and Jimmy and Draymond are great enough that they could win the Warriors a game or 2 games, a game and a half in a series, just like almost by themselves. But you're right. In order for the Warriors to win the series, you're going to need Pajemski and Moody to hit some shots, specifically from outside. And I think Pajemski has been a little more consistent of late. He was bad offensively versus Memphis, but he was pretty darn good and efficient versus the Clippers. Warriors ended up losing that basketball game. You know what Moody's going to give you defensively, and he's probably going to draw the Jalen Green matchup today would be my expectation, and Jalen Green leads the Rockets in points per game this year, about 21 per game. Şengün right behind him. I would imagine it's going to be Draymond on Şengün, and then Moody on Jalen Green, and I feel pretty confident Moody's at the very least going to do a better than average job against Jalen Green. But will Moody consistently make the open 3 from the corner, from the wing, wherever he is in this series? If he's shooting close to 40% from deep at the end of the series, the Warriors will probably win. If he's shooting closer to 30% from deep at the end of the series, they might lose this series. I think you've correctly highlighted on the Warriors' offensive side of things, Moses Moody, Brandon Pajemski, that group, maybe even Buddy Hield off the bench, like that group of shooters, they're a key for the Warriors. And if they don't get a lot of consistent shooting from those 3, it's kind of hard to see the Warriors, to find a pathway for the Warriors past the Rockets.
Yeah, I think the advantage for the Warriors for me in this series is they have more adjustments to make. I think they can play a little bit different in terms of their style. The Rockets play very much one way, and if it doesn't work, then they're out of luck. But the Warriors don't just have Pods, Moody, Buddy. GP2 is a player that has finished games lately instead of someone like Moses or Pods because they haven't been playing well. And then Quentin Post is also a potential X factor in this series as well, with how he shoots the basketball and can space the floor. He kind of got played off the floor in that last Houston game, and whether that's a one-off or not is something to monitor. But the Warriors have different, I think, options to try and generate offense against a fourth-ranked defense on the Houston side. The one thing, too, is like Houston, one stat that stood out to me when I was looking at the series was they're actually last in three-point contests per game. And I think it's because they just simply don't allow you to take many threes. Like, you're just not going to get them off. And so how can the Warriors generate offense? To me, it's going to have to be, hopefully, around the mid-range area or maybe even at the free throw line. And that's where I think, as opposed to before Jimmy and now, I have more confidence that they can outscore the Rockets at the free throw line in this series. And it's because of Jimmy Butler. It's because of the amount of pressure that he puts in other players in foul trouble. And I think it's also just because the Warriors are a team that's smart enough to say, hey, they're not going to let us shoot these threes. We got to find a way to get into the paint. So, the Warriors have different options to try and generate offense, whereas I think the Rockets, it's kind of, they're just going to roll the ball out there and sort of see what happens.
And you're right that Houston defensively does not allow a lot of threes. The Warriors, even if they're not like tearing the cover off of the ball and hitting threes at a really high clip, they're probably going to be able to win the three-point battle, you would think, because this is a Houston team that is not great from the outside. On the season, they shoot 35% from deep. Now, on average, their opponents have essentially shot the same exact percentage, like 0.4 of a percentage higher the opponents have shot than the Rockets have shot this year. Dillon Brooks is their best three-point shooter, just a tick under 40% from deep. And Dillon Brooks has kind of been at times a streaky shooter, but besides him, you don't have a lot of consistent shooters. So the Warriors might ultimately go to a similar tactic versus the Rockets. Not that they were daring the Rockets to shoot threes when they missed 27 in a row back in the postseason when James Harden was a Rocket. But there is an idea for the Warriors to say, you know what, we're going to let you take whatever you want from downtown. We're going to trust the numbers. And maybe 1 game, 2 games, you catch fire, you can't miss, you win that game, but we're going to trust that your shooters are not going to be good enough consistently. We're going to pack the paint. We're going to try to take away Şengün and your advantage inside. We're going to take away Jalen Green's drives. We're going to make him an outside volume scorer, and we're going to try to win the game that way. And that might be a path to victory for the Warriors. If you can take away Şengün inside, there's not a lot else consistent offense the Rockets can get.
Well, and to be fair, they have. I think Şengün across this season, the team that he averages the second fewest points against is the Warriors. Yep. Jalen Green has had, in terms of a season series, the worst series against the Warriors. It's like 12.5 or 13.5 points per game. So between their arguably 2 best scorers, they haven't been able to get much out of them over a large sample size against Golden State. So that should give Warriors fans some sort of positivity about the series. The fact that they've already done a pretty good job on their 2 most explosive or series swinging players, and now it's just about, well, is Dillon Brooks going to shoot it like he did a couple Sundays ago when he was really good? Is Fred VanVleet, who has not played well against the Warriors at all, going to emerge like he did in the Toronto finals? You never really know, but I think overall, the fact that they've played good against arguably the Rockets' 2 best players, that's a sign of positivity.
Yeah. Let's get to our Take It to the Bank prediction, which is brought to you by Fremont Bank, full-service banking with no compromises. I'll go first. I'm going to stick with Alperen Şengün, and I'm going to go under 10.5 rebounds for Şengün tonight. This might be surprising considering he kind of dominated the Warriors 2 weeks ago, 19 points, 14 boards. I think generally when a matchup is pretty lopsided like that, Draymond takes it personally. And again, I think Şengün is kind of the focal point of the Warriors' strategy and their scheme and what they've been planning for the last couple of days. I think the Warriors are going to try to get him in the action often in this series whenever he's on the floor. It's whether he's mismatched and he's guarding Jimmy Butler or Moses Moody because they go big and the Warriors go small. They're going to attack that, and they're going to try to get him switched out on Steph on the perimeter, whether it's Draymond coming up and setting a screen or whether it's split action and putting Şengün into the decision-maker spot on defense. I think the Warriors are going to do that, try to drag him out to the perimeter as much as they possibly can, and it's going to take away some rebounding opportunities for him. So I'm going to go Şengün under 10.5 boards. And much like we're talking about Evan Şengün offensively, if he's not scoring maybe like around 20 per game, it might be tough for Houston. If they also don't dominate the glass like they did 2 weeks ago, it might be tough for them to win this series and this game as well. So that could be a key for this whole series, and I'm gonna say it happens tonight, under 10.5 boards for Alperen Şengün.
Yeah, and to your point, I think a lot's been made about the Thompson-Curry matchup, but the one that, and I think you kind of illustrated it earlier, that I think changes the series one way or another is how Draymond plays against Şengün, because he's likely going to be matched up on him the entire series, and Draymond's played heavy minutes at the 5, probably the most that he's had in some time. So if he's able to make things difficult for Şengün, I'm 100% with you there. I like the under in this game as a whole.
213.5.
It's really low. It's really low, but those numbers are a little fishy. I do like 213.5, but if we're looking at player props, I like Amen Thompson over 1.5 steals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just think that he's going to be on Curry the whole time, and it's no disrespect to Curry, but he's loose with the rock, and there's going to be at least one steal that's just a gimme in the backcourt. It's probably a rip and run dunk the other way. That's the other thing, too. If the Warriors, I know turnovers are obviously glaring at this point in this series, but live ball turnovers specifically have to be limited by Golden State because it's an automatic dunk on the other end. Yeah. I think Amen Thompson is good for 2 steals in this game, so that'll be my Fremont Bank lock of the game.
I like it. Yeah, the turnovers is always a big one, and we're going to talk about turnovers, I would imagine, post-game one way or the other. The bigger categories, I think, is what you're getting into. Points off of turnovers and the fast break points, because with these athletes that Houston has, Jabari Smith, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, you commit a live ball turnover, odds are it's going to be a bucket, and it might even be like an open corner 3 with a decent shooter, and that turns into 3 points off of a turnover and 3 fast break points. Now the Warriors like to run themselves as well, and it could benefit them. You also might think maybe a slower game benefits the Warriors because this is a Rockets offense that isn't great in the half court, but the Warriors also want to try to score on a Houston defense before they get set as well. So you kind of have to find a middle ground. Yeah,
I mean, interestingly, the Rockets don't play that fast. Like, I know they have a lot of athletic players and they're very quick and they're tenacious, but I think they're like 17th in pace. They're right where the Warriors are in terms of pace. So they don't actually get up and down the way that I think you just would assume that they do.
But when they have those like transition opportunities, they've got the athletes to run past to.
Yeah, and that's what you have to limit also because that's their strength. They don't generate consistently good looks in a half-court setting.
Yeah. All right. We got one more thing to get to here as we wrap things up in just a couple of minutes, and then we'll get to our game and series predictions. First, though, it's time for our out-of-town NBA game of the night, sponsored by the San Francisco International Airport. Wherever your team goes, you can get there from SFO. This Warriors-Rockets game, as we mentioned early, is the last game of the day, so there's no other upcoming games around the NBA today, but the Cavs are hosting the Heat in Game 1 of the East's 1-8 first-round series. After 3 quarters, it's a competitive game. Cavs lead by 8, 87-79. Cleveland over Miami after 3 quarters. Tim Roy, I'm sure, will tell you the final score of that one once it goes final on the broadcast here on 95.7 The Game. Day 1 of the playoffs, pretty competitive. Day 2, not so much. Maybe we get a competitive close in Cleveland and a competitive game between the Warriors and the Rockets. Anyway, wherever you want to check out NBA action from around the country, SFO can help get you there, no questions asked. That is our out-of-town NBA game of the night, sponsored by the San Francisco International Airport. Wherever your team goes, you can get there from SFO. All right. Prediction time, first for Game 1 and then for the series. Evan, I know you told me you liked the under, under 213.5, but how do you see this game playing out? Who wins Game 1?
I'll say this. I think this game is more important for Houston than it is for the Warriors.
Agreed.
because if the Warriors steal this game, they're able to basically manage the rest of the series. It means they could try and get greedy in game 2. They can play less minutes if they want. They can set things up to try and go for it. They are going to be able to dictate the tenor of this series. If the Rockets win tonight, I don't by any way, shape, or form think it's over for Golden State. In fact, it might allow them to find something based on how Houston's been playing as of late that could open things up for them later in the series. So from that standpoint, I do like Houston tonight because I also like the under in this game, and that to me favors the Rockets. I think this game is one that does not eclipse 100 points for either team.
Wow.
And I think Houston pulls it out at home.
Well, I mean, under 100 points for both teams. Let's see, second to last time the Warriors played in Houston, 91-90 was the final score, and that was the game you were talking about earlier, that NBA Cup game. Warriors had a lead. That was the crazy moment. Warriors up by 1, like 3 seconds left to scramble for the ball, and Kuminga diving for the loose ball gets called for a foul, and it sends, I think, Jalen Green to the free throw line like 75 feet from the basket.
That was also the one where Steph took a 3 with like 13 on the shot clock when there was 15 seconds left in the game.
Did not make a lot of sense. Warriors ultimately lose that game. Maybe,
but I just think both teams are fresh, and so naturally there's going to be some jitters. First game of the postseason, even for an experienced team, and I just think that the Rockets are going to have a lot of fresh legs, and they're going to try and run the Warriors into the ground.
I hear you. I'll go 108-106 Warriors. It's going to come down to the very, very end. I think we both think it's going to be a pretty competitive basketball game. I'll go a narrow Warriors victory, 108-106. And then you're right. If they get game 1, they can manage the rest of this series because they snatched home court right back if they get this one today. Of course, you're right. Even if they lose today, they could get home court on Wednesday in game 2.
Yeah, I don't think it's a death sentence at all if they lose tonight.
I'm with you. But I'm still picking a Warriors win. What about the series as a whole, Evan? We have about a minute and a half left.
I like the Warriors. I like the Warriors in 6. I think that they're going to be able to figure out a way to win one of these 2 games. I think maybe it comes in game 2, and then they come home. And again, because the Rockets don't, in my opinion, have many ways to adjust, they play the very same style. That's going to dictate whether or not that they can. If the Warriors solve that, I think this is actually a series that may be contradictory to their age. They actually get better as the series goes longer.
I think that's generally how the Warriors work.
Yeah, once they figure you out, you're kind of cooked.
Yeah. And it's not a knock on Udoka. I know I was maybe taking a little bit of a shot earlier, but it is more so just a credit to Steve Kerr, who, by the way, is 1 win from his 100th career postseason victory as head coach of the Golden State Warriors. He would be just the 7th NBA head coach to ever do that, joining a list of Phil Jackson, Pat Riley, Greg Popovich, Doc Rivers, Eric Spoelstra, and Larry Brown. The other 6 to have ever done it. Steve Kerr can join that group with a win today. He is sitting currently on 99 career postseason wins. All right, we'll be back for Warriors wrap-up tonight. That's Evan Giddings. I'm Mark Grandy. Tim Roy is standing by live from Toyota Center in Houston. He'll take you up to tip-off at 6:30, and then Evan and I will be back probably sometime around 9:30, 9:45, or 10-ish, and then we'll take your calls all night long. Evan, talk to you in a little bit.
I'm looking forward to it. Line up those phone calls. We'll go as long as we need to break down game 1 of the first postseason series for the Warriors in 2 years. It's been some time.
Let's do it. Warriors Live presented by Xfinity. At home or on the go, you'll get the fastest internet to all your devices. Tim Roy is next.